Hey guys, Michael Pytel here. Today we're going to be doing a full, honest overview of the new Ryan Williams signature scooter from Nitro Circus. Now, I've already got it fully unboxed and laid out in front of me. I got a scale, I got some tools, and I got a tape measure. We're going to do a full breakdown of this thing to give you guys as much information as possible. This deck that's on this scooter, I'm actually going to put onto my personal setup and I'm going to ride it and try it out. Let's jump right on into the video, get this thing fully disassembled, and give you guys the rundown. Alright, so to start it off, I'm going to set the bars aside. We'll talk about those in a little bit. I'm excited to just get right on into it. So as a first general overview, this thing is pretty large. Looking at this deck, it does have the boxed ends in the back. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that, but a lot of you guys love boxed ends, so it's definitely a good move. And then if you do look at this, you'll notice that the down tube, the part of this head tube right here, is very long and mellow. Now this is just like the deck that I ride. This is the main reason that I'm going to be putting this deck on my setup, is that this provides a larger wheelbase, gives us more nose blunt room, and overall it changes the way that it feels when you do tail whips and brides and pretty much all tricks. Also, you're going to notice that with this scooter, we've got wider wheels. The core of the wheel is a standard 24 millimeter, but the outside, I believe, is a 28 millimeter as far as the overall width of the wheels on here. So you have compatible forks with an SCS. This SCS doubles as a dust cover to make it a little bit cleaner and eliminate some moving parts. This scooter comes with a little square piece of grip tape. Honestly, this is kind of junk. It's just some stock grip tape. I would suggest to peel that up. If you do buy this scooter, that's definitely going to be one thing you're going to want to upgrade. I ride deck pins. I'm going to put deck pins on it, but most of you guys ride grip tape, so I definitely recommend picking up a fresh sheet of grip tape before getting too into it, because this is definitely going to get tore up pretty quick. But it does say Nitro Circus on it. It looks nice and simple, but I can tell it's not going to last too long for you. Looking at it, we've got a pretty large head tube. So we've got a pretty simple graphic on the bottom. The bottom does have a divot in it, so it does essentially have two grind rails. It's not a full flat bottom. Personally, I like that. And then you'll notice that we do have some caps right here, but it is open in the middle part. But for nose blunts, there's still plenty of room. It is angled, so if you are trying to go into a nose blunt or do some different kind of grinds up there, you're not going to have any issue. We got a nice wide brake to match with the wide wheels. And then it looks like they took a good amount of weight out of the front, so that's good. The way that it's designed, a lot of companies end up leaving a lot of bulk weight right in the bottom there, but they did cut it out to where it's pretty thin down there, but in a good way. So I'm pretty excited for that there's not like a whole bunch of weight going on with the deck alone. It is a gold anodization. I'll be honest, the anodization does kind of make it look a little cheap. I don't really personally like the finish too much. It kind of looks almost like a sandblasted kind of look rather than a polished look and then anodized. But it gives a little bit of a sparkle, makes it a little bit more of like a goldy kind of feel. And then it has pretty much all black components on the rest of it. But let's set this aside before I take it apart. And we'll kind of do a general overview on the bars. So these are an aluminum bar. There's plenty of welding up here. There's plenty of weld contact points. So these bars are pretty large. They're aluminum, so they're lightweight. And then most of you guys are probably going to have this cut down. When you do cut it, that's going to make it even lighter. But it comes with this little reinforcement. This is to help it to where when you have the aluminum bars in the SCS, because they're so large, they were probably having issues in testing with the bars bending right at the top of the SCS. So what this insert does is it helps prevent that from happening, because when we have aluminum bars at this extreme size, they're not as strong as steel or titanium. So to compensate for that, we've got some extra thickness with this reinforcement. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and measure these handlebars. All right, so as far as our width goes, they are 25 inches tall. And this scooter Comes in at about 27.5 inches tall, so that's pretty big. Keep in mind though, the head tube on this scooter, like I mentioned, is really tall. So because of the variation in different head tube lengths, this scooter is going to feel a little bit taller than any other scooter because that handlebar is going to sit higher off the ground because of that. So just kind of keep that in mind. Looking at it, this insert comes in and out, so that's good that it's not jammed in there or anything like that. If you're trying to eliminate weight and you're not riding the bars too big, I'm sure you can take it out. It's not gonna bend right off the bat. That's, like I said, really just a reinforcement for really tall bars. If you take a peek at the grips, they are district grips. These are the cheap grips that nobody liked, that are kind of just junk grips. They're fine, but I don't know, I don't really like them. I don't like anything about them. The bar ends are just flimsy and cheap. I mean, just trying to get the bar ends out, it just ripped. So, but I see that the handlebars do have the internal hexagon. This is something that I first saw with District, to where instead of a cylinder on the inside, it's like a hexagonal shape. So apparently that makes it stronger while still keeping it lightweight, but aluminum's aluminum, so if you're having issues with your bars bending, you should be riding aluminum anyway. All right, so now let's get into taking down the rest of this thing. So, the compression bolt up here in the top is a 6mm compression bolt, so that's good. Pretty much all the hardware on this thing is the larger 6mm head and the larger M8 threads, so that's definitely a good thing. That means that you can crank down and get this thing as tight as you want, and it's going to come loose a little bit less than the smaller threads would. So I pop that out, and the SCS comes right off nice and easy. Like I said, this bottom part of this SCS does double as your dust cover, so there is a little rubber dust seal right here. It's definitely not the lightest SCS. It has a good amount of bulk to it. The scooter overall isn't crazy light, but for the size it's pretty big. But this SCS probably has a good amount of the weight there. So if you're worried about weight, maybe go with something a little bit skinnier or lighter. But it does have these cutouts. Not a super unique look, but can't go wrong with the design. But in the SCS, again too, we have the larger hardware, larger than the M6. We've got the M8 threads with the 6mm head with the Allen key. So I'm going to set that aside. And we've got some little micro spacers for the headset. This disassembles super nice and easy, so it's machined decently well. So I'll set those aside. So this is a high-end scooter, so for a high-end scooter, I'm expecting it to be, machined properly and everything like that, but you never know with some of these brands. So inspecting all the welding and everything like that, it looks decent, no complaints. Like I said, I'm gonna be riding this deck on my setup, but it's definitely like a nice thin look. I'm not sure how strong this really is going to be because it's so thin up here, but it definitely has enough contact points as far as the weld goes because it's such a long head tube, but we will see. I can already tell though, taking that fork and SCS off, this is significantly lighter. This deck is not going to be heavy at all, I can already tell. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back wheel off. So these deck ends that are back here, they do have the hexagonal shape, so you don't need a wrench. All you need is just your 6mm Allen key. Oh, but it is pretty tight on there. Let me grab my ratchet. All right, so I got my ratchet. Normally I would have this in a vise, but back here in front of my camera studio type area, all I have is this table. So that axle was insanely tight, which is not a bad thing. Not complaining at all, just very surprised. Alright, but I do got that nut out now. And the axle is off. But yeah, so whatever, I guess the machine tightens at, it actually cranked down so hard on that axle that these little thin spacers actually ended up mushrooming. So because I just noticed that, I'm probably gonna, anybody that buys this scooter at my store, I'm gonna probably put nice custom upgraded spacers in the back because they should not be this thin, because the back wheel is one of the thick parts that takes the biggest hits, especially when if you're throwing like a bri or coming down or anything like that. So I'm not sure why they ended up going with such a small spacer, but I'm definitely going to use my lathe and machine some custom spacers for anybody that's buying this. And for my own personal setup, I'm definitely gonna do that as well. So, deck ends aren't excessively heavy or anything like that. Again, personally, I'm not a big fan of boxed ends on a deck, so I'm probably going to end up cutting at least one of the sides, but for the sake of symmetry, I'll probably end up cutting both. But I was definitely right, this is not a heavy deck at all, because like I said, they had a lot of the weight cut out in the front here, but yeah, it's not bad there. But like I said, this grip tape, nothing too special about it. I'm just going to go ahead and trash that. But yeah, so it looks like we've got the tri-hole configuration, which is common in Phoenix and Crisp and Grit and all that, which is probably the same factory as this. It does have the built-in threads, the riveted-in threads, so that's definitely good. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how long this deck is going to last, but I'm definitely excited for it. I wonder, so this sticker in the front looks like it's not just a sticker. I don't think it'll peel off. Yeah, it looks like it's definitely staying on there. A little R-wheeling in the front. But yeah, so we got that fully disassembled. Now let's get out our measuring devices and give you a little bit more specific of a rundown. But yeah, still looking at it, I mean, these wheels are pretty much identical to the Crisp and Phoenix wheels and everything like that. The forks, basically identical to the District forks, or the Dominator forks, all that good stuff. Nothing too special, really, about anything on here other than the deck is the only thing that's somewhat unique. The handlebars are unique, nothing revolutionary with it. The only thing that really stands out with this deck is the larger wheelbase, the longer and mellow down tube that gives it that nose blunt room and overall that larger feel. But yeah, I mean, it's a decent scooter for sure. You're definitely getting your money's worth, but again, nothing revolutionary or anything like that, other than the fact that it's great to have a rider like Ryan Williams get a signature scooter and a company like Nitro Circus to dabble into the industry a little bit more than what they are already doing, getting this kind of different aspect of it. So, all right, so first off, we'll go over this deck. So like I kind of mentioned, this is a gold anodized deck. As far as our overall length goes, it looks like we're right at 21.25 inches, and our width about 5.1 inches. Another thing that I want to look at is our head tube length. That's an entire 4.5 inches, so that is a little bit bigger than most. So keep in mind, if you are going to be running this scooter and you plan on customizing it any, You might run into some compatibility issues with your compression system depending on the length of your fork. Speaking of the length of the fork, this one is 6 inches, which is pretty standard. So if that one is 6 inches, then some other forks are probably gonna work on this deck. But I'm gonna go grab one of the most popular forks, a tilt fork, and kind of see how it stacks up in there. All right, so I just went ahead and grabbed that tilt fork. Comparing the lengths, they are identical just about on length. So it looks like if you are running SCS, you're not gonna have too much of an issue customizing this. Blue and gold definitely go good together and stuff like that. So I just kind of grabbed the first one that I had, But yeah, another thing that I want to kind of look at, it looks like it's a standard 1 inch, but I want to measure the extrusion height. Yep, and I was right about that. It is just a standard 1 inch extrusion height. That's important because that affects the way that it feels when you grind, and also if you plan on running pegs. Some decks are a little bit larger than 1 inch, in which case you're going to want a larger outer diameter peg rather than the standard 1 inch outer diameter that most are. But this is a standard 1 inch height extrusion, so nothing to worry about there or be concerned about. It's going to have that traditional feel that pretty much probably 90% of decks on the market have. So now we can look at the weight. All right, so this deck with the hardware, so we have the spacers, the axle, the boxed ends, everything that is only related to the deck itself comes in at 3 pounds, 11 ounces. Not the lightest deck on the market, but definitely not the heaviest, especially for the size, considering it's over 21 inches long and over 5 inches wide. That is not a bad weight at all for this size scooter. But let's take that off. The wheels, if you're curious, they're definitely not the lightest. They're at 1 pound, 5 ounces. The forks come in at 12 ounces. The SCS comes in at 8.3 ounces. The handlebar with the grips on there comes to 2 pounds, 5 ounces. And if you do plan to run it, the bar reinforcement is 2.2 ounces. Our headset, all headsets are going to be the same, but that's 1.7 ounces. A couple other hardware things, but more or less, again, not the lightest scooter in the world, but certainly not the heaviest. As far as our SCS goes, it looks like it was a little bit taller than a standard SCS, the baby SCSs, which are 3 inches, and I was right. So this SCS is 3.25 inches tall. I'm gonna guess that that's because it has a built-in dust cover. All right, and then we've got a depth of 1.6 inches. So, 0.1 of an inch bigger than most SCSs. And then with our head tube, it is identical there. So, nothing super crazy about that. It's just a little bit taller than most SCSs, but it's not anything significantly different. But yeah, so that is a full and complete rundown of the R. Willy Signature Scooter. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments down below. If I missed anything, call me out on it. I love to be wrong.